Daniel and his wife Laura, newlyweds in search of a fresh start, had bought an old countryside house with the hopes of a quiet, peaceful life. But from the moment they arrived, Laura couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that clung to her. The house was ancient, filled with the creaks and groans of time, but something else lurked beneath the surface. It wasn't just the silence. It was the kind of silence that swallowed sound whole, leaving a heavy void in its place. One afternoon, while exploring the basement, Daniel stumbled across a bricked-up doorway. Hidden behind dusty old shelves, the door seemed deliberately forgotten. Despite Laura's apprehensions, Daniel's curiosity was too strong to resist. He tore down the bricks, revealing a small room beyond, perfectly sealed in silence. Inside, the air was stifling, thick with decades of forgotten history. When they spoke, no echo responded, just a deep, impenetrable quiet. It unsettled Laura, but Daniel was fascinated. What could this room have been used for? And why had it been sealed off? Days passed, but Daniel couldn't get the room out of his mind. It was more than a room, it was a vacuum of sound. Whenever he stepped inside, the world outside seemed to disappear. At first, it was just that, a peculiar silence like being underwater. But then, after his third visit, something changed. He was standing in the center of the room when he thought he heard a faint whisper. He turned quickly, but there was nothing. A trick of the mind, he told himself. But the next time it was clearer, someone calling his name. At first, he convinced himself it was just the wind or his imagination playing tricks. But each time he entered, the whisper grew louder, clearer, called his name. The voice wasn't menacing, but the fact that it came from nowhere sent chills through him. He swore he could hear his own voice whispering back at him, but distorted, like it had passed through some unseen filter. One evening, while sitting in the room, the voice revealed a memory from Daniel's past, a deeply buried secret from his childhood that he had never spoken aloud. His blood ran cold. How could it know that? The silence in the room wasn't just quiet anymore. It was listening. That night, when Laura asked where he'd been, he simply shrugged. The basement. But there was something in his voice, a distance that hadn't been there before. Laura began to feel the changes in Daniel. He was spending more time in the basement, and when she questioned him about it, he became evasive, even irritable. "It's just a room," he would say, brushing off her concerns. But it was more than that. She could see it in his eyes, a growing obsession, a dark curiosity gnawing at him. One night, Laura couldn't take it anymore. While Daniel was out, she decided to go into the basement herself. The moment she stepped into the room, the familiar oppressive silence wrapped around her. No sound, no echo, no life. But as she stood there, she felt something else, an unseen presence. Then she heard it, her name. At first, it was faint, a whisper brushing against her mind. But the voice knew her. It knew things about her she had never spoken aloud. Her insecurities, her fears, her doubts. The voice started revealing secrets from her past, things she hadn't even told Daniel. She spun around, searching for the source, but there was nothing. Just that endless, suffocating quiet. When she stumbled out of the room, her heart pounded. She tried to explain to Daniel what had happened, but he laughed it off. "You're imagining things," he said, though his smile didn't reach his eyes. That night, she awoke to the sound of footsteps creaking above her head. It was Daniel. She found him in the basement, sitting in the dark, whispering to the walls. From that point on, things only got worse. Daniel's obsession deepened, and Laura's world began to unravel. The voices weren't confined to the room anymore. They followed her throughout the house, creeping into her thoughts, whispering her name at all hours of the night. She would hear footsteps late at night, shuffling outside their bedroom door, only to find nothing there when she checked. Objects began to move. Doors creaked open on their own, and sometimes, Laura would catch glimpses of something moving in the shadows out of the corner of her eye. But the worst part was Daniel. He was slipping away from her, becoming more distant by the day. He would spend hours in the basement, murmuring to himself, barely acknowledging her presence when he returned. It was like the house was consuming him. One evening, as Laura was preparing dinner, she heard Daniel whispering in the kitchen. Except when she turned around, he wasn't there. The whisper came from the basement. She felt a cold knot of fear tighten in her chest. Desperate to save him, Laura begged Daniel to leave the house with her, to get away from whatever was happening. But his answer was chilling. "We can't leave," he said, his voice hollow, almost robotic. "It won't let us." That night, she found Daniel in the basement again. But this time, the room wasn't silent. It was alive with voices, all calling her name, all telling her to run. Daniel stood in the center, his eyes wide and unseeing, his mouth twisted into a grin. "The house knows everything about us now," he said, his voice not entirely his own. "And soon we'll know everything too." The air in the room was thick with whispers, screaming her name, revealing every fear, every doubt, every secret she had ever buried. Laura tried to run, but the door slammed shut. She was trapped. Daniel took a step toward her, his smile growing. "We're part of it now."